Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Today is Thursday, June 10th. A third of the way done June 10th. And this is show number 187. So we're sneaking up on 200 shows already since I began this broadcast back in August. All righty. So today is going to be an abbreviated show, much like 2 days ago. I didn't do a live broadcast yesterday. I didn't have guests planned for this entire week. And I kind of scheduled it where I'm doing some behind the scenes stuff. I'm redesigning my websites, and I'm just kind of digging into stuff that needs to get done. And there are, projects, and it's not like it's hard. I've done it before, but it's just one of those things that, it's kind of hard to be like doing broadcasting and talking to people and, anyway, so I said, hey, yesterday I just decided to take the day off. So I didn't do a broadcast on Monday or on Wednesday this week, but I did do one on Tuesday, and I updated you guys on the overall strategy for the American Gumption and the other Gumption websites. So today I'm going to talk about the SpeakingGump website specifically, and a couple of side ones that come off of that, branch off of that. So I'm just going to do a monologue. I'm going to update you what my plan and my strategy is for that. And it's kind of exciting because the SpeakingGump was my original site. It's over 10 years old. It's about 11 or I guess technically 2008 it launched. And so it's, like, I don't know when it launched, probably in the fall. But anyway, it's about, almost going to be 13 years old, SpeakingGump. So that's still alive and well. And I'm refocusing that. And that's a pretty important foundational part of what the whole thing. So I'm going to update you guys what I'm thinking that way as far as SpeakingGump, and then I'll get out of here. So it's going to be maybe a 20 or 25 minute broadcast at the most. I got a slideshow prepared with some talking points or some ideas that just sort of walk you through it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to tell you what's coming up. So tomorrow I'll do a broadcast, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do. Probably a monologue only again. Now, next week, I have a couple guests scheduled already for Wednesday and Friday. Nikki Roscoe comes back one more time. She's got her new book out on crystals, and it's actually written for children. But we're youngsters here. We're young at heart. And since we don't know the basics of crystals, it's an excellent book. It's a book for adults and for children. So Nikki and I will talk about that on Wednesday. And then Darlene Ondi. Darlene, someone I met a year and a half ago, and we've stayed in touch. And she is a freedom fighter from Canada. So she is an activist and someone who's saying, hey, our rights are being taken away from us, and this isn't cool. And she carries around a Canadian Constitution. And, we think it's kind of crazy here in the U.S. in terms of lockdowns. It's even, it's a little more challenging for our neighbors up north. So anyway, Darlene will be with us next Friday. So that's what's going to happen. Alrighty, now let me go ahead and shift gears, launch right into my monologue. And what we're going to talk about is the SpeakingGump update. So that is going to be my monologue for today. And I do have a slide share to share with you. There it is. All righty. So let's go ahead and just launch right into that and tell you what I'm thinking about. All righty. So first thing is the SpeakingGump website originally launched back in 2008. And then in 2009, I had it. I might be a year off on this. I think, yeah. So by 2009, 2010, I had like kind of the version 2 that launched, and I had a web development company help me get that launched, and really pretty impressive website for its time. So that was the original one. And then version 3.0 came in 2013-14 timeframe, when I ended up going back and going back to school and learning WordPress. And not that I'm a website developer, but I felt like I needed to have better control over my own ability to share my message with you. And so I ended up creating my own version of SpeakingGump And then I did another version, like probably version 4.0 back in 2019. So, there's been multiple iterations of it, and that's currently sitting with that version. And then I launched American Gumption last year, and I've kind of forgotten about SpeakingGump, but it's time to bring SpeakingGump back to life and to refocus it and to really, take advantage of the decade plus worth of content and material that I created, because it's really the foundation of American Gumption. And so I wanted to share that with you, what I'm thinking about with that way. So in the past, I talked when I did SpeakingGump, I talked about, let's go back this way. I talked about what I did, and people always said you have to solve the problem for what you're doing for others, and I intellectually got that, but I didn't ever actually really embrace that. And I feel like I'm really ready to embrace that. So that's kind of the biggest change that's going to happen. Ironically, it's the biggest change because really that's what SpeakingGump is all about. It's about change. And it's about what the movie Forrest Gump was about, with change, the journey of life. And it's about what my life has been, change, as I've developed this message and gone through it. And so how do you embrace change? How do you not only, accept change, but how do you actually really get down to embracing it? And if you can't embrace it, how do you accept it? If you're not going to embrace change, if you're going to, move into it, at least be accepting of it. And if you're not even going to be accepting with it, then you need to deal with it. And you need to so it's kind of like if we go back to do that little thing, embracing change would be the highest level of what we want to live our lives doing, where we embrace change on a regular level. And I feel like in my own personal life, I have, gotten a lot more used to change, and I've done some pretty radical changes over the course of the years. But there's also been times when I just had to accept change, and that was the best I could do. I couldn't necessarily embrace it, and there were times when I couldn't even hardly accept it. I just had to deal with it. So that's really what SpeakingGump will be refocusing on, is helping organizations and individuals, how to embrace, and if they can't embrace, then to accept, and if they can't accept, then at least deal with change. So generally, when it comes to change, people don't like change. Very few people, I don't know what the percentages is, but, it's got to be, I would think well over half the people don't like change. They say that. They come right out and they say, hey, I don't really like change. I just want the status quo. I want things predictable. I want to go with the flow. It's probably closer to 70 or 80% of the people who really likes change. Yeah, maybe 10% or less. And then there's people who not only do they not like it, but they resist the change. So, these people are kind of fighting it, and they're going to hold on to what they have. And so, when we're in our organizations, in our personal or professional lives, there's always change. And so, if you don't like it, are you, at least accepting of it, or are you actively resisting it? And then there's some percentage, a small percentage of people who are actually going to sabotage your change. And in an organization, that can be catastrophic in terms of, you have a plan, you're trying to make things happen. And if you got people actually trying to sabotage what you're doing as the leader of the organization, then that's obviously not a good thing. So overall, though, people don't like change, they resist it, and sometimes they even sabotage it. All right. So the question I have is, what do you do about that? What do you do about that? And in the past, people, what they've done is they come up with what they call a change initiative. So they put their strategic hat on. They think about, well, look, things aren't working the way they're supposed to be working. So we're going to make things work in some kind of a different way. And that different way is what, technically gets called a change initiative. We're going to do this. And this happens, the leadership of an organization ultimately decides that and plans it. Now, do they do that on their own, or they do it with their executive team? The answer is yes, they do. Yes, they do. And then a lot of times they'll bring in some kind of an organization, an outside organization, a consulting firm to look at it and help them create, what it is. Because, when we are so close to the problem or so close to the challenge, we don't see it. So there's lots of people who come in and just they're consultants and specialists who help people see the bigger picture. It's what life coaching is all about on an individual level, and then on an organizational level, you have people who are change strategists, and they come in and they basically do a survey of what you're doing and make some recommendations. And ultimately, it's the leadership, it's the owner or the leadership of the organization that ultimately gets to decide what they're going to do. But they use these outside organizations to help them define what that is. So now you have the plan, right? You have the plan, and then you tell people, and you say, hey, this is, we're no longer going to do this. We're going to do this. And how you tell them becomes, very critically important in terms of, do people accept it or do they not? And then, like I said, in the past, you're just sort of hoping for the best at that point, and a lot of times you think like you put all this energy and effort into number one, which is like, creating the change initiative. You might spend months kind of thinking about, well, wait a minute, we no longer are going to do this. We're now going to do this. And then you just sort of blurt it out and tell them, and you hope for the best. And where I believe that I can really help an organization and groups of people is in that part number 2 and 3, where the part of telling them, and then, you can kind of not have to hope for the best, because ideally there's more than just there's a strategy involved in how you tell them and how you initiate it. And then you don't have to necessarily just hope for the best, because you're actually going to get feedback from the people and make the change initiative work. So the next question is, how has that worked for you in the past, where you're doing it? And I've heard it given away the answer. It's kind of hit or miss in terms of, how's it work and how's it not work. And then some people embrace the change. Your leadership team is usually more inclined to embrace it. Either they'll fully embrace it, or they'll at least realize that, hey, it's like part of the world, and maybe they'll begrudgingly accept it, but begrudgingly going along with it or going along with it is so much better than the people who are actively out there sabotaging it. And you always end up with some of those people who want to sabotage what your change initiative is, and consequently they have power in terms of they are somehow influencers within the organization, and their resistance to it emboldens others to kind of follow along, and because they don't like change, so people go along with it. So this whole process of how you tell people is really the critical piece of it. And that's the part that I feel like I want to work with organizations. So the next question is, what could you do differently? What could you do differently? And the new approach that I'm suggesting is just be genuine and authentic. Kind of, put your heart out there on your sleeve and let people know, what it is you're doing. Let them see the real you. And that's not necessarily easy for people to always do that, but that's the approach that I'm recommending and willing to work with people on to help them. You need to be honest. And people, I don't believe that any leaders are dishonest in terms of what they're telling people, but their honesty in that genuine and authentic, and then full disclosure of what's going on. It's like, maybe we'll give you this piece, but we won't give you this piece. And then, there's like a lack of trust, or there's a skepticism to the whole plan, because maybe you're not, being fully genuine and authentic and sharing everything that with people. Ultimately, you want to sell people on the why. Now, selling is nobody wants to be sold, but if you are genuine and authentic and you are honest on it, you can get people to buy into it. And you really need to, you need to get down to the nub of the why are you doing this? And so if you are sharing in a genuine and authentic way and honestly on why this change initiative is necessary and required, then it's going to be much more likely to be bought off on. People are going to embrace it, and people are going to say, hey, let's go. So that's kind of the big picture of it. So you want to just be genuine and authentic, be honest with people, and then sell them on the why. And that's what SpeakingGump is going to get refocused around. Now, it's still going to have all of the, the life lessons from the movie and the the three principles of Gumption, taking personal responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and interactions, creating experiences, in some kind of a skit where, Forrest Gump sits down with the leader of the organization and has a conversation and explains things, or multiple people come and sit on the bench with Forrest, and you go through and you explain the whole change initiative in a way that captures people's imagination and attention, and not just like from a gimmicky, showy kind of way, but from a genuine and authentic and honest conversation. And that is something that I've done with organizations and have helped them do it in the past. And gosh, I did it 25 years ago for the first time, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lot of fun. And then I didn't have all of the skills to really be able to recreate that on a repeatable platform. But now at this point, I really do believe that that's the direction that I need to take. So anyway, SpeakingGump will be it'll basically be a skit, a conversation that I have on the bench with the leadership about this change initiative, about where the company has been and where they're going and why they're going to this new direction. And then I can have a keynote afterwards and talk about, the principles of Gumption and the life lessons from the movie, and we can have some fun doing all of that. Change by Gumption is going to be its own separate spin-off website. Right now, the Change by Gumption is included in the SpeakingGump, and that iteration 4.0 of SpeakingGump has Change by Gumption kind of on the front page. And so that'll become its own separate website, and that is in the process of being of occurring and should in the next couple of weeks be revealed. And then Strategic Gumption is a brand new website that I'll be launching, and that is basically for those who need a little more of a plan, or it's really the planning part of how you go about selling this change initiative. Now, let's be clear. I do not work with organizations in terms of coming up with their overall strategy in terms of what it is, where their business is and where they're going. I'm going to expect that all of the organizations that I work for have gone through certainly the basics and probably a fairly in-depth review of that. The point that I get involved with them is in the actual rolling it out and communicating it part. And so that part where we said, okay, they spend several months like planning this change initiative, and then they just like tell people and they hope for the best. That the part where they tell people, that's where SpeakingGump and Change by Gumption can get involved. And then Strategic Gumption can be part of that kind of behind the scenes, helping to plan and make that all happen if that part is also necessary. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today. Pretty simple, short and sweet. Do you need help being genuine and authentic? A lot of leaders have a challenge. They're probably pretty much, most leaders, I'm going to say, are all genuine and authentic people. But when they get into that leadership role, and when they're, taking on the, wearing the hat of the leader, they don't always come across as being genuine and authentic. And consequently, a little bit of a barrier gets put up between the people and the leader or the leadership. And some of that could, so anyway, that's if you need help in that area, who better than SpeakingGump, Mr. Gump himself, to help break down some of those barriers. All right, another question is, do you need help being relatable with your group? And I'm going to relatable. I originally wrote this question, do you need help being honest with it? And again, I believe most people are honest, but does their interpretation of what they're trying to do come across as relatable to people? And if it's not relatable, then people sometimes think that they're not hearing the whole story, and they're not hearing the whole truth of it. So we want to be able to get that whole truth out and help people so that the whole organization can move forward. And then finally, does your organization need help selling your change initiative? This is how I envision rebranding SpeakingGump. And again, all of the things that I've talked about in the past in terms of what I do and how I do it, that's all going to be there. It's just going to be a kind of a refocusing and reshifting on, what it is. This is really addressing who I need to help, or who I can help, and who I'd like to help. And so, that's really it. So that is SpeakingGump. SpeakingGump launched again in 2008, was like version 1.0. 2009, I had version 2.0 launched. And then version in 2014, we ended up with 3.0, and then 4.0 became SpeakingGump 4.0. So this will be SpeakingGump 5.0 that I hope to launch in the next couple of weeks with just kind of a refocused like homepage. All the content behind it will remain the same. A lot of this change by Gumption content that's there will get moved to its own separate website. And then, the strategic Gumption website will also be launched. And so think of like the change by Gumption as more of a consulting program where there's a bigger project, a larger organization, and then the strategic Gumption is a little more like a working one-on-one with a leader or a group of leaders to help kind of plan that whole thing out. And then the SpeakingGump being the part where I show up and actually do a skit with some people, have a little conversation on the bench that gets all written out, and the other people that I talk to, that Gump talks to, just have to do their part, and their part will be just be genuine and authentic and share honestly what this whole thing is all about. And so, it's a little bit gimmicky, but it's not gimmicky because it's actually a real conversation that is occurring between real people. And one of the people happens to just pretending to be somebody else. So that's it. So that's what SpeakingGump is going to be. It's a great time to do it because there's a lot of change and disruption in the world. And I'm excited to kind of share this. I had kind of envisioned sharing, updating this a year ago when I launched American Gumption. But then, of course, we got into a lockdown situation. There were no live events. People weren't meeting. And this can actually even occur in a video format too. So that's a very real possibility to communicate with your team virtually. We can, set that recording up and do that in some kind of a studio where we have the conversation and the different people, and it can be just as effective. All righty. So that's going to wrap up the presentation for today. Let's see, Bettina. Oh my gosh, Bettina grew up moving. Let's see what she's saying here. She says she growing up as a military brat, and she became her own change agent and bring about transformation everywhere that she goes. And yes, she had her own little transformational day yesterday with her quarterly event that happens, and hopefully that went well. I checked in a few times during the day and sounded like it was going great. So anyway, thanks, Bettina, for being a friend of the show and for sharing your experiences. And yes, you are a change agent. You are a transformational human being, and we love you for that. All righty. Well, that's it. Look at that. 10:24, a short show. I knew it was going to be a short show. Probably going to do the same thing tomorrow. Again, I've been working behind the scenes with some of these things. And so haven't focused on lining up a guest and being prepared to have those interviews, but got a couple next week. Who am I going to talk to? Nikki Roscoe on Wednesday, Darlene Ondi on Friday. And I've got several people. And I'm one other thing that's happening, I can share this. I'm going to really start doing more pre-recorded interviews that, will be happening. And then I have that interview. And then during the morning show broadcast, I'll come on, I'll do my morning announcements. I'll do a monologue, play the interview, play the pre-recorded one, and then come back at the very end and wrap it up and, say goodbye for the day. So that's a format shift that will be occurring in the next few months as we go forward. So that's it. Have a great day. I'll see you all tomorrow.